Welcome back, good people, to Bible Geometry number 4. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at facts and interesting things about Ezekiel's city. All the way back in the introduction, I shared some verses as to why these measurements were so important and told the story of how measuring Ezekiel's city is what got me into Bible geometry and my beginning of learning these things. I've chosen here to call it a city because Ezekiel gives many more dimensions than just the temple, but also the things that lie around it, though something about the temple's measures is intrinsic to the city as a whole. As we go on to discuss Ezekiel's measures, you'll find that they are unique in the Bible. Ezekiel speaks the same mathematical language as the other authors of the Bible, but he does so with a different accent or dialect, or perhaps his time or place didn't allow him to put things the same way. But as I've already said, the measures themselves are extremely useful, but no matter how you measure this thing, the proportions are always going to be the same. If you're following along in your Bible, you will notice that I have not included every measure given in these chapters of Ezekiel 40 through 48. Many of the measures are the same thing given twice, 4 times, or 8 times, and it would be redundant to have many slides of the same calculations, and some calculations were left out because the significance of them was not as apparent or easy to understand as the ones I have presented here. Keep in mind that I cannot help you or educate you in these things unless you study your Bible, and I cannot do that for you, so please read along and put these things that I'm saying in their correct context. And before we get started in Ezekiel, I would like to refresh your memory of this slide at the end of my solar system presentation, where I displayed this information. Now, notice the numbers here. The diameter of Mars gives us 4224, but so does the day on Mercury measured in Earth hours. Also, Mercury has 88 day orbits and rotates in 1,408 hours, meaning a sunrise to sunrise on Mercury is 176 Earth days. If you'd like to see more on this, go back to my solar system presentation where I explain this whole slide, but the reason I'm showing it to you now is because, as far as I understand, Ezekiel's city is a diagram of our entire solar system. This is not every measure of every planet or the nature of those planets, but these are the easiest to find, and they are clearly presented in Ezekiel's measurements. So make a mental note of some of these numbers so that when they appear earlier, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's kind of funny to think that I began with this PowerPoint. I only intended to make one of these on Ezekiel's city for my Bible class, and you see where that's gotten me. And this is the hardest one to find the measures on, as it's not explicitly listed in the Bible, but having found out what the measures in the other systems in the Bible represent, all we have to do is work backwards, and we find that they fit perfectly. So in different parts in Ezekiel we can read, "And behold, a wall on the outside of the house round about, and in the man's hand a measuring reed of 6 cubits long by the cubit end and handbreadth. I saw also the height of the house round about. The foundations of the side chambers were a full reed of 6 great cubits. And these are the measures of the altar after the cubits. The cubit is a cubit and a handbreadth." Like I said, I have a number of names that you may hear variously throughout this presentation. In chapter 41, verse 8, Ezekiel calls it a great cubit, but occasionally I'm given to saying a long cubit or Ezekiel's cubit, and 1 reed is 6 of these. Now we have to get a little more specific talking about cubits. For this presentation, we're going to be understanding that a cubit itself is 18.1 inches, and a handbreadth is 3.02 inches. Assuming you're a man of average size, if you put your arm and hand up to a yardstick, you'll see that that's about right. So 1 great cubit is 21.12 inches, which is 1.76 feet. I'll mention this as we go on further, but we've seen this number 8 appearing surrounding Noah's situation and also in Solomon's temple, and 176 is double 88. And there are 6 of these great cubits in 1 reed, making 1 reed 10.56 feet. That is exactly 2 paces. And here's something to consider about Ezekiel's city as I refer to it with our cosmos. The Latin word urbis, where we get our word for urban, meaning a city, and orbis, where we get our word for orbit, have the same root word. They're very phonetically similar there. And if you live in small town America, take time to think about why your city is built around a square. That is a very old tradition in city building, and we're about to see it here in the book of Ezekiel. So let's look at some pictures. Here's a chart that if you look this up online or go over this in your Sunday school, you may be presented with, and this is very well done. I have disagreements about the placement of some things, but overall, it's very good. And notice the measurement down there in the bottom middle. They call the measure long cubits. And from this website, at the top, they've listed their measure where 1 cubit equals 21 inches. So they got very close. And you can see in their measures, they have 3 1/4, 8 1/8. They don't quite meet it, but somehow, down in the city square, they have the exact number in square cubits. I don't doubt the sincerity of the artist that constructed this diagram, but even he realized he needed a little bit of a fudge factor in order to get the city square to fit in with the rest of the measures in the Bible. Here's a three-dimensional view, and this one is extraordinary. Here we see the altar as its dimensions are described, and notice the word for hearth up there, Ariel. Might want to read Isaiah 29 for that one. This again is the picture of the temple in the 1560 Geneva Bible. It's a very up-close depiction of it. But notice at the top of the pillars, which we discussed in Solomon's temple, there are 2 spheres. You can see the way the Geneva Bible lays out the city and temple complex. When you read about the tribal designations for land in Ezekiel, you'll see that they are strips of land going from north to south. And indeed, that same thing has been done with the city, allowing all tribes equal access to the temple. The measures begin with the east gate. Then came he unto the gate which looketh toward the east, and went up the stairs thereof, and measured the threshold of the gate, which was 1 reed broad, and the other threshold of the gate, which was 1 reed broad. We had a similar, though much more grand idea of this when we looked at Moses ascending the mount. The only way to get in this city is to go up the stairs. As far as I can recall, this is the only mention of those stairs, but nevertheless, you have to ascend up to this city. So the perimeter of the gate gives us our 4224 number, and every little chamber was 1 reed long and 1 reed broad, and between the little chambers were 5 cubits, and the threshold of the gate by the porch of the gate within was 1 reed. So if we do 1.76 by 5, we get 8.8 feet between chambers, which is 105.6 inches. And what a remarkable way of measuring Ezekiel has here, where 0.88 feet is equal to 10.56 inches, and his reeds as well are 10.56 feet long. Then he measured the porch of the gate, 8 cubits, and the posts thereof 2 cubits, and the porch of the gate was inward. That gives us 211.2. We can already see this echo of 4224 in here. And he measured the breadth of the entry of the gate, 10 cubits, and the length of the gate, 13 cubits. A very rare mention of the number 13 here. Let's see what that points to. 130 by 176 gives us 2,288 feet of square area, which is equal to 216 2/3 reeds. You'll have to go back to my slide on the moon to find that number, the orbital speed of which is 2,288 miles per hour, and that would also be the rotational rate at the equator. Continuing on with the east gate measures, he measured then the gate from the roof of one little chamber to the roof of another. The breadth was 25 cubits, door against door. So 176 by 25 is 528 inches. Keep in mind that 528 always refers to a pace or a mile, given that in one of your paces fit 5.28 of your feet. This will become crucial to the understanding of New Jerusalem, so we need to start thinking about those things now. He made also posts of 60 cubits, even unto the post of the court round about the gate. 60 cubits is 105.6 feet. Though this would not be a part of a Bible study per se, I must mention it in passing for your curiosity's sake. The stone monument England is most known for is the Stonehenge Circle, which measures 105.6 feet across, and the trilithon and lintel stones measure 10.56 feet across. That means that whoever built Stonehenge was using Ezekiel's measures to do it, and Stonehenge keeps very good track of the summer solstice sunrise and winter solstice sunset, but maybe that's for another presentation. And from the face of the gate of the entrance unto the face of the porch of the inner gate were 50 cubits. Gives us 88 feet. which is 1,056 inches. Now the 8 sacrifice tables, and the chambers and the entries thereof were by the post of the gates, where they washed the burnt offering. And in the porch of the gate were 2 tables on this side, and 2 tables on that side, to slay thereon the burnt offering, and the sin offering, and the trespass offering. And at the side without, as one goeth up to the entry of the north gate, were 2 tables, and on the other side, which was at the porch of the gate, were 2 tables. 4 tables were on this side, and 4 tables on that side, by the side of the gate, 8 tables, whereupon they slew their sacrifices. And the 4 tables were of hewn stone for the burnt offering, of a cubit and a half long, and a cubit and a half broad, and 1 cubit high, whereupon also they laid the instruments wherewith they slew the burnt offering and the sacrifice, and within were hooks, an hand broad, fastened round about it, and upon the tables was the flesh of the offering. As I said, a half cubit is 0.88 feet, which is 10.56 inches, meaning a cubit and a half is 2.64 feet. If you convert that into inches, you'll get 31.68. And remember that that is our box drawn around the Earth number, 3168. The area of the surface of these tables is 6.9696 feet. And that terminates there. It's not a repeating decimal. And Methuselah's age was 969 years. I put that in here only as a curiosity. I'm not sure if that's what Methuselah's age refers to, but I do recognize the digits. But if we take this curious number in table area and don't use it in square units, we can do some interesting math with it. 6.9696 divided by our great cubit number gives us 3.96. Double 3.96 is 7.92, and double that is 15.84, and then we arrive back at our 31.68 number. We're talking about 8 sacrifice tables, and a box drawn around the Earth would have a perimeter of 31,680 miles. And that 3168, if we take it in feet, is exactly the length of 3 of Ezekiel's reeds. This 1584 we're going to see on some future slides, so I want you to know that that is double our Earth number. Moving on to the inner courtyard, the length of the porch was 20 cubits, and the breadth 11 cubits, and he brought me by the steps whereby they went up to it. And there were pillars by the posts, one on this side and another on that side. The feet of perimeter of the porch gives us 109.12 feet. The next number that I will present, I'm not saying that this and that are the same, but I do want to compare the two. You'll see the correspondence between them. I'm not making excuses here, and I'm not trying to fudge anything either, but I have talked about variation in measures of large bodies, and of course it depends on where you start measuring these bodies before you get the correct numbers. Nevertheless, I do not mean to make excuses. This is only a curiosity. But if you divide the diameter of our Sun by the diameter of our Earth, you'll find out that 109.0909 Earths can fit into the diameter of the Sun. Now that is very close to 109.12, but it is not exact. It is remarkable to me, though, that we've spent all this time focusing on the number 108, and it seems that 109 is a close cousin of importance. I'm keeping my mind open about this difference in 109.12 to 109.0909. Ezekiel may have been referring to the Earth-Sun relationship here, but my calculations don't match up exactly. Recalling the name of these pillars in Solomon's temple, Hiram set up the pillars in the porch of the temple, and he set up the right pillar and called the name thereof Jachin, and he set up the left pillar and called the name thereof Boaz. Jachin means he will establish it, and we had to ask in that presentation what was being established and where. Going now into the temple, and the breadth of the door was 10 cubits, and the sides of the door were 5 cubits on the one side and 5 cubits on the other side. That gives us a total perimeter in feet of 52.8. There's our human pace number again. So he measured the length thereof 20 cubits, and the breadth 20 cubits, before the temple, and he said unto me, This is the most holy place. We get the same dimensions of this in Solomon's temple in the 18-inch Hebrew cubit. Keep in mind here that this cubit is 21.12, but the perimeter of the most holy place is 140.8 feet. Refer back to those Mercury numbers for 1,408. And we've seen the number 352 occur a few times in all of our geometry studies. 352 by 4 gives you 1408. After he measured the wall of the house, 6 cubits, and the breadth of every side chamber, 4 cubits, round about the house on every side. 4 cubits gives us a length of 7.04 feet, which is 7.84.48 inches. Now it's clear to see here that 7.04 is half of 14.08, but also remember that it takes 7.04 Hebrew cubits to make one of Ezekiel's reed. Like I said, these measures that Ezekiel uses don't come up anywhere else in the Bible, but they are a missing link between the old Hebrew measures and our modern imperial measures, and we can use them to complete the translation of Ezekiel's measures. And the side chambers were three, one over another, just like Solomon's temple, 3 levels of Noah's Ark, and the court within a court setup of the tabernacle. Moving on, now the building that was before the separate place at the end of the west was 70 cubits broad, and the wall of the building was 5 cubits thick, round about, and the length thereof 90 cubits. 90 cubits gives us our double earth number again, but that is also 52.8 yards. So we measured the house 100 cubits long, and the separate place, and the building with the walls thereof 100 cubits long. Also, the breadth of the face of the house and of the separate place toward the east 100 cubits. No surprise, we're just moving decimal places. We've seen these numbers already. The altar of wood was 3 cubits high, and the length thereof 2 cubits, and the corners thereof, and the length thereof, and the walls thereof were of wood. And he said unto me, This is the table that is before the Lord. Take a moment to consider that this table is made of wood. Everything in Solomon's temple, including the offering tables, were covered with gold, but this table, by itself, all alone, is made of raw wood. This table would have been in the middle of the holy place, right before the door to the most holy place. What is going on here? Why is this table so unique? Well, it is 3 cubits high, which comes exactly to 5.28 feet. That is 1 human pace. And we saw that the men of Galilee correctly identified the Lord Jesus as a carpenter. If the Lord is a carpenter, then he must have a workbench, or a table to do his work on. Or, considering he is a carpenter, perhaps he is building a table. And if he was building it, he's taking a lot of care to make sure it is 5.28 feet. Playing around with our double earth number up there gives us something fascinating as well. If we take 158.4 and subtract 144 from it, we get 14.4. Moving to the outside, looking at the priest's chambers, then he brought me into the utter court, to the way toward the north, and he brought me into the chamber that was over against the separate place, and which was before the building toward the north. Before the length of 100 cubits was the north door, and the breadth was 50 cubits. The perimeter of the chamber is 528 feet. He measured it by the 4 sides, and it had a wall round about 500 reeds long and 500 broad, to make separation between the sanctuary and the profane place. That means the square area of this place is exactly 1 square mile. And if we were to walk around the outside, we would see that it is 21,120 feet in perimeter. If there's one thing you do not want to miss when you read this part of Ezekiel's book, it is this verse right here. The thing that is being communicated is the most important message in our Bible. Ezekiel 43, verse 7. And he said unto me, Son of man, the place of my throne and the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of the children of Israel forever, and my holy name shall the house of Israel no more defile, neither they nor their kings by their whoredom, nor by the carcasses of their kings in their high places. I want you to think really hard about what has just happened in this verse. God says, the place of my throne and the place of the soles of my feet. In English, our word and is a coordinate conjunction. When things are conjoined, what happens to them? When things are coordinate, what does that mean? Isaiah 66. Thus saith the Lord, the heaven is my throne, and the earth is my footstool. Where is the house that ye build unto me, and where is the place of my rest? Can you answer the Lord's question with the information that has been provided? Revelation 4, verse 6. And before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal, and in the midst of the throne, and round about the throne, were 4 beasts full of eyes before and behind. This is extraordinary. Somehow the 4 beasts are in the midst of the throne, and also round about the throne. How is this possible? And again in the Lord's Prayer, Jesus prays, Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. And after that great marriage supper of the Lamb, in the vision of the New Jerusalem we read, "Behold, the tabernacle," and that means dwelling, "of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them, and be their God." Remember that that was the instruction given Moses. These measurements were given to the end that God could be with his people and dwell among them. So going back to Revelation 4 verse 6, the four beasts are round about God's throne. We're looking at the 12-part zodiac here with the lion, the man, the ox, and what we understand to be an eagle round about something in the middle. And notice that the designer of this zodiac has taken good care to make sure that a cross is in the middle of this image. What is in the midst or in the center of the four beasts here? The date that I am recording this is Friday, March 14, 2025. As a matter of fact, we had a very beautiful lunar eclipse showing on our full moon last night. But if I were to go outside tonight at midnight, I would see the constellation Leo directly above me, like it is at the top of this graphic. And if I were to look to the west, I would see the very edge of Taurus on the horizon. And if I were to look to the east, I would see the very edge of Scorpio on that horizon. And let's assume I was well prepared and brought my X-ray specs with me and looked directly down at my feet. I would be able to see Aquarius way down below through the other side of the earth. So the four beasts are round about God's throne, which is in the midst. What thing is in the very middle of the zodiacal circle? Back to verse 7, God says, "The place of my throne and the place of the soles of my feet." God's throne is the heavens, the place of his feet is the earth, and in this verse they have been made the same thing. This is the rule of the kingdom of God being established on our planet. And as God asked Job in Job chapter 38, "Knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth?" Knowing what we know now, we have to take a very close look at the altar. So the altar shall be 4 cubits, and from the altar upward shall be 4 horns, and the altar shall be 12 cubits long, 12 cubits broad, square in the 4 squares thereof. The perimeter of this altar makes 84.48 feet. Given that it is 12 cubits long and 12 cubits broad square, we have our Israel numbers coming into play. And I'll say that the King James translators have not done these two words justice. It says, "So the altar shall be 4 cubits, and from the altar upward shall be 4 horns." The first word altar is from the Hebrew word marel, which means mountain of God, and the next one is from Ariel, which means lion of God. The complete pulpit commentary says this: "Noteworthy is the word altar, which in this verse renders two distinct Hebrew terms, umaral and amaral, which these men with the unpronounceable names, and others, after the Septuagint, to Ariel, identify as synonymous and translate by hearth, but the first can only signify the mount of God, while the latter may mean either lion of God or hearth of God." Keep in mind that Ariel is the name given for the city of David in Isaiah 29. What is the mountain of God in Bible prophecy? You can read in Micah chapter 4 to find the answer. It is Zion, which is prophetically called New Jerusalem. And that's the thing that John is given to measure. God's covenants always come with a promise of land, and this one is no different. "Moreover, when ye shall divide by lot the land for inheritance, ye shall offer oblation unto the Lord an holy portion of the land. The length shall be the length of 25,000 reeds, and the breadth shall be 10,000. This shall be holy in all the borders thereof round about." Once again, the square footage of this thing should look very familiar. It is exactly 1,000 square miles. "Of this there shall be for the sanctuary 500 in length, with 500 in breadth, square round about, and 50 cubits round about for the suburbs thereof." That gives us 880 feet a side, which is 10,560 inches per side. And these 50 cubits about for the suburbs, that gives us our number 360 again. It is 360,000 square cubits. And notice the perimeter there. We have our 4224 in every aspect of Ezekiel's city. Let's look at the outer courts. In the four corners of the court, there were courts joined of 40 cubits long and 30 broad. These four corners were of one measure. So there we have 30, our biblical month number, and 40, which we've discussed over and over again, giving us 70.04 on the long side and 52.8 on the short side. And the side that is associated with the number 30 gives us 633.6 inches. I'll remind you that the diameter of the earth in furlongs is 63,360. I can't say that I recognize the numbers for perimeter and area, however. Chapter 47. And when the man that had the line in his hand went forth eastward, he measured 1,000 cubits, and he brought me through the waters were to the ankles. Again he measured 1,000, and brought me through the waters were to the knees. Again he measured 1,000, and brought me through, the waters were to the loins. And afterward he measured 1,000, and it was a river that I could not pass over, for the waters were risen, waters to swim in, a river that could not be passed over. And he said unto me, Son of man, hast thou seen this? And that is a question that the great measurer here is not just asking to Ezekiel, but asking to you and I as well. And my reason for creating these presentations is to answer this very question. 4,000 of Ezekiel's cubits give us 84,480 inches, meaning each portion is 1,760 feet. And notice how Ezekiel is measuring these waters with proportions of a human's body. We'll see in our next presentation that the New Jerusalem is measured on these same principles. Coming to the end now, we're looking at the portions for the priests, and these shall be the measures thereof. The north side 4,500, and the south side 4,500, and on the east side 4,500, and the west side 4,500. That means each of the sides are 7,920 feet, or exactly 12 furlongs. Last time I mentioned this number was way back in our Noah's Ark presentation, but you see there that number 95040. Well, that is the age of Noah, 950, and also his 40-day trial of rainwater in one number. And the suburbs of the city shall be toward the north, 250, and toward the south, 250, and toward the east, 250, and toward the west, 250. That gives us 5,280 inches on each side, and a perimeter of 21,120 inches. There's a common saying that you save the best for last, and this is how the book of Ezekiel ends. And these are the goings out of the city on the north side, 4,500 measures, and the gates of the city shall be after the names of the tribes of Israel, 3 gates northward, 1 gate of Reuben, 1 gate of Judah, 1 gate of Levi, and the east side 4,500, and 3 gates, 1 gate of Joseph, 1 gate of Benjamin, 1 gate of Dan, and the south side 4,500 measures, and 3 gates, 1 gate of Simeon, another of Issachar, 1 gate of Zebulun, at the west side 4,500, with 3 gates, 1 gate of Gad, 1 gate of Asher, 1 gate of Naphtali. It was round about 18,000 measures, and the name of the city from that day shall be, The Lord is there. This should echo in those other places of the Bible where we see prophetic measuring. David intended to build a house for the Lord to dwell in. The purpose of the tabernacle was that the Lord dwell amongst Israel, and the construction of New Jerusalem will cause the Lord to dwell on earth. So each side of this city is 7,920 feet. That gives each tribe 880 yards, and the total perimeter is 31,680 feet. And look at that, it's 10,560 yards. Our planet Earth is 7,920 miles in diameter, and a box drawn around the Earth has a perimeter of 31,680 miles. So the thing that Ezekiel has witnessed the measure of is the planet Earth, and his measurements are no accident. If we measure the diameter of our planet using Ezekiel's reed as measurement, it comes to 3,960,000 reeds. No surprise then that the radius of our Earth is 3,960 miles. I think it's good that the book of Ezekiel ends here with a focus on the Earth, because the next thing that is measured in prophecy is New Jerusalem. I read in Isaiah 65, verse 17, For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered, nor come into mind. But be ye glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem, a rejoicing, and her people a joy. Now there is a principle in mathematics that says two things that are equal to the same thing are equal to themselves. And in those two verses, God says, I create new heavens and a new earth. He says, be glad for that which I create. I create Jerusalem. If you would like to see the finishing of these things and final analysis of New Jerusalem and its description of our home in the cosmos, catch up with me in our final presentation on Bible geometry, where we will measure New Jerusalem and find these things out for ourselves. God bless you until then, and I will see you up ahead.